I'm here to teach students how to identify bolts by size quickly so they can replace fasteners if they need to, and more likely repair fasteners if they're damaged, because we run into damaged fasteners all the time. And there are two numbers that we're concerned about. We're going to focus primarily on metric fasteners, and I'm going to go over how to do my metric fastener identification quiz for any students that did poorly on that. So there's two numbers that we're concerned with metric fasteners, and the first number is the major thread diameter. So that's the distance from the top of this peak to the top of that peak is major thread diameter, and in metric fasteners we do it in millimeters. So if this distance from here to here was 10 millimeters, we'd start this fastener measure out with 10 millimeters. The second number that we're concerned about is the spacing of the threads. And with metric fasteners, we call this pitch. And pitch is the distance from one peak to the next peak. So if this distance were 1.5 millimeters, this fastener would be 10 by 1.5. So if I had damaged threads, the tooling that I would use to repair these threads would be sized this way. Now I'm going to take you out in the shop, and one of the first tests that I give students on identifying fasteners are just metric fasteners and identifying them by thread diameter and pitch. I have my bolt identification test right here, and what we can see are fasteners of various sizes, and boltdepot.com has done a great job with this picture showing major thread diameter in this column right here, and it gradually goes up 6 millimeters, 7 millimeters, 8 millimeters, 10 millimeters, 12 millimeters, 14, and 16. And followed by each major thread diameter, we have the pitch, so 1.0, 1.25, 1.0, 1.5. And the problem that most students have, or where they get mixed up, is there are multiple 8 millimeter bolts. We could have an 8x125 or an 8x1. And if we look close, we can see the difference that the 8x1, these threads are spaced 1 millimeter apart, or the 8x125, each thread is 1.25 millimeters apart. So let's go ahead and take the test. And what we have to do is look at each fastener, and this one's got a number 5 on it. We got to size the fastener and then go ahead and write 5 on our paper in the spot that is next to the bolt that it is. All right, and what we've been given is a thread diameter gauge. So this has both standard and metric threads, and we're working again just on the metric side. So the first thing I want to do with this pile of bolts, because I have multiple 8 millimeter bolts and multiple 10 millimeter bolts that I'm going to have to figure out the thread size, is just in order lay the bolts out smallest to largest with my diameter gauge, and then go back and identify pitch sizes when I have the bolts next to each other. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is just set up our bolts smallest to largest, and I have this diameter gauge to help me, but I may not even need it. So I've laid these out, and I believe that I have them grouped, and that's going to help me identify fasteners. I'll start with the smallest one, and this has got a number 7 on it, and it fits in our 6 millimeter hole. Well, when I come to my test I'm going to find that there's only one 6mm choice. It's 6x1. So I can now say that the pitch on this fastener is 1.0, and I can use that to check any of my other fasteners that might be 1. I could have an 8x1 bolt, and these threads would have the same spacing, just a different diameter. Now I'm going to come to my next group of bolts, and these two, visually without the gauge, both appear to be the same size, and they're both 8mm. And on my test I have two 8mm choices, 8x125 and 8x10. So I know the difference between the 125 and the 10 fastener is one has threads that are closer than the other. So when I put these two, these are 8 and 9 next to each other, I can see that this red fastener right here has threads that are much closer together than the gold fastener here. So I'm going to call this my 1.0 and this my 1.25. And again, I have a 6mm bolt that if I wanted to use it to check, I could just take the threads and make sure that they fit together tightly and there's no gap between any of the threads. And these are both 1.0 fasteners. So I'm going to list 9 as my 8x1 and 8 as my 125. Now I have a 125 pitch gauge if I need it. I come to my next group of fasteners here, and these look like they're 10mm to me, but I'm going to check with my diameter gauge. And I have a 10x15, a 10x125, and a 10x10. So when I take these three bolts, I'm going to arrange them now. In the beginning of the exercise, we arranged all the fasteners smallest to largest. I'm going to line the threads up finest to coarsest. And I can see right away these threads are closest together. These are a little bit further apart than these, but they're closer together than these. So remember, my three pitch sizes were 10, 125, and 15. And it didn't take a pitch gauge. I was able to use fasteners that I had available as a size reference. So 9 will be our 10x1. 3 will be our 10x125. 2 will be our 1x5, 10x1.5. I got another group of 3, and these are going to be our 12mm fasteners. I'll check that with my gauge. And I'll do the same thing. I'll line these fasteners up, closest threads that are closest together to threads that are furthest apart. And I have 3 pitch sizes here. I've got 12x175, 12x1.5, and 12x1.25. So 125 is going to be the closest together. That's this bolt here, which is number 5. Next furthest apart will be this bolt here, which is 11, 1.5. And spaced furthest apart is bolt 1 here at 12x175. I have one last bolt, and this is a 14mm bolt, and I need to figure out the thread spacing right here because I have two 14mm possibilities, a 2.0 and a 1.5. And visually, I hope that we're starting to notice that they start to match fasteners we just worked with. So here's my 12x15, and I'll verify that that's a match. And I'll show you what would happen if we used a bolt that was the incorrect size. If I grab the 175, these are further apart than these, and I try and lay them together, you can see that there's a gap. There's light showing between them. And if you look even closer, you'll notice that these threads are spaced a little further apart than these threads. So this is a 1415, and it's number 10.